Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is ChessRabbitt. This is the second video of the under 1450 Open Russian Board 6 Deb 53 versus ChessRabbitt. In this game I'm going to get to a particular position and I'm going to show you that my analysis of that position held correct because my opponent did exactly what I thought he was going to do. I had black this game and my opponent started off with e4. I responded with my now famous 1e6. I'm looking into playing the King's Indian Defense coming up here, and I've been practicing it on chess.com, and I think maybe I'm going to start switching up a little bit because I'm getting a little complacent with this opening of 1e6, and also although that's my universal opening, but I think that my progress as a chess player is being stagnated because of that. So I'm gonna switch a little bit to the King's Indian defense and maybe even the King's Indian attack as white. So anyway, e6, knight c3, d5, e5, c5, d4, going into a an advanced French of sorts, but the knight on c3 here is misplaced in the advanced French. The knight would be on f3. Knight c6, attacking the e4 pawn twice and is being defended once. So my opponent decides to instead of defending the pawn again with knight f3, he decides to take. D takes c5, and that allows me to develop my bishop. B takes c5, knight f3, so he decides to play knight f3 a move later. Knight g, e7. Since my bishop is already off the square, this knight can stay here and maybe go to this square a little later, f5, a little later in the game. But for right now, it can stay there. Usually, I play this knight to e7 first, the g knight to e7 first, and then go to f5 to attack the e4 pawn. But the e4 pawn is not there. My bishop is already out. So I don't have to move it if I don't really want to, but I think I still do move it somewhere because, I want my bishop to have a nice home just in case of knight a4. As you see, the computer is pointing out now. Bishop b5, attacking my little knight that is pinned to the king right now. Bishop d7, I'm pinning the knight. Right now, if my opponent decides to take on c6, of course, what I would do is take back with the knight, and that would leave my bishop a place to go back to in case it is attacked by the knight at a4. So my opponent castles. He doesn't take, he castles. I go a6, put a question to the bishop. What are you going to do? You're going to take it? You're going to leave? People in that question to the bishop. He decides to take. Bishop takes c6, knight takes c6, and now my bishop is free to go back to this square if need be, if attacked. Rook e1, putting his rook on a semi-useful file, which could be useful to him later on in the game. Queen b6, doing what the computer was pointing out, that this f2 square is a little weak, so we can put some pressure on it. Whether that pressure would bear any fruit, we'll see, because my opponent can just play what it is my opponent's move now, right? Yeah, my opponent could just play knight a4, in which case I would have to move back here, and he could take the bishop, and I'll take back with the queen, and of course the f2 square is safe. But then again, and then once I castle, my king will be safe and I will have a good position. My queen is a little out of place here, but it is on this half open c file right here, and my opponent needs to take use of the half open d file here. Anyway, So he goes knight a3, and I go for the weak square on f2. Then I take here, followed by the bishop, and I can win this rook. So I'm winning the exchange. King h1, bishop takes e1, queen takes e1, and I won the exchange. I did analyze that, of course, but like I said, if my opponent had went knight a4, none of this would have happened. But he didn't. He decided to go a3, and I win the exchange. From this point on, it's a one game, but you still have to win a one game. And believe me, I have lost one games before. And this guy did intimidate me a little bit because he's Russian, so I didn't know what sort of tricks he would have up his sleeve. But from this point on, really at move 13, it's a one game. Queen c7. Now we're going after this pawn. I really don't have too many pieces that can go after the pawn except the knight and the queen, and probably this pawn here to f6. That's the only pieces that can attack that pawn right now. But as long as these two pieces are attacking that pawn and these two pieces are defending it, well, I'm good. I can use this bishop and this rook for other activities. Bishop f4, protecting the pawn. Rook c8, putting the rook on his half open c file. King h4, queen h4. Now he's coming over here to the queen side to attack something. If I allow my opponent to put his knight here on g5, and then he will have a nice little attacking square here, and especially if I castle on this side, he will have a nice little attacking square here on h7 to go to, and could quite possibly, if he move his queen down to h5, could attack this square also, f7. So I had to be very careful and mindful of this situation that's going on over here. I decided to castle into this anyway, but I figured once he moves his knight down to g5, then I can cover it with h6, and this h7 square would be covered. So I castle, rook f1, putting his rook on this open, half open file, this half open f file, which is pretty good because it's attacking this rook here once these pieces are exchanged. If I decide ever to move my pawn from f7 to f6 and exchange it. But I don't think I would be doing that right now because he has too many pieces on this side. And like I said, I may be the exchange up right now, but you can lose in one game. Queen b6. As you can see, the computer was pointing out this loose piece. John Bartholomew says look for loose pieces, undefended pieces. Always try to look for undefended pieces and develop tactics around them. Of course, he says that about the blitz play, but it's good in correspondence play too, because even in correspondence play, even though you're supposed to look at every position, there are lots of pieces that are there are a lot of undefended pieces. Like right now, since I moved my queen to this square, well, now, believe it or not, my queen and bishop are both undefended. So even when you move a piece to attack an undefended piece, you now have two pieces that are undefended. So it's sort of a tit for tat for every move that happens around in chess. b3, protecting the undefended piece, but now he has another undefended piece, the knight here on c3. So let's see if I go after that. Knight d4, getting ready to exchange a couple of pieces and attack this undefended pawn here. As you see, the computer said to go to queen. I should take on queen c5 to attack the undefended knight, but I decided to attack the undefended pawn on c2, and if we trade off, and then this knight will be attacked and it's undefended. So that was my plan. I'm not a computer, so anyway, he decides to pin my knight. I didn't see that move, but the knight is undefended because now my rook can take it, so I take it. Rook takes c3, bishop takes d4. Now my bishop is attacking my rook and queen, and let's face it, he just got his exchange back. Queen c7, Bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, and now as far as pieces goes, the exchange is equal, but I think I'm ahead a pawn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so I'm still a pawn ahead. He got his exchange back, but I'm still a pawn ahead, which is enough for winning because this pawn here is now has to be protected. And let's see what my opponent do to protect it. Knight d4. The knight is protected by the queen laterally, so that's a decent move. And my light square bishop here can attack this knight. So we have to find something else for this undefended light square bishop to do. Queen d2, putting my little queen deeper into his territory. Queen f2, queen g5, shifting my queen over to the king side to protect my king over here, is what I was really doing. And of course attacking this pawn, but I really wasn't attacking the pawn. I was just bringing my queen over to the king side to protect from any shenanigans that can happen over here. h3, queen take h5. So he didn't defend his loose pawn he had over here on e5, and I decided to take it. That was an easy move. c3, queen d6, b4, protecting his weak a3 pawn. e5, pushing his knight away, telling his knight to, well, go somewhere, buddy, please, because you can't go here, you can't go here, you can't go here, and you can't go here because this bishop is protecting all those squares, and plus the pawns over here are protecting these two squares. So the only place this knight can go are these 4 squares. So which one of those 4 squares will this knight go to? Knight f5. Well, that's an exchange, and I can handle that. So bishop takes f5, queen takes f5, b5, locking in these 2 pawns. Now these 2 pawns can't move forward, and I also have to protect these 2 pawns that I have in the center. And I really need to protect this pawn here because it is a passed pawn. So right now I have a lot of good compensation. I'm 2 pawns up. I have a lot of good compensation in the center, but also I have to watch out for this weak square here on f7. My opponent goes rook e1, attacking the e5 square. I go e6, protecting it. So now I have a protected passed pawn and quite a bit of activity in the center. Rook d1, going after this weak pawn. I push it to d4. He takes, c takes d4, e takes d4, queen e4. Now at this point of the game, I told you I was going to let you know when I really started to analyze this position here because it's an end game. Even though I'm 2 pawns up, it's an end game, and I really need to be precise because I have this nice little passed pawn in the center, which is, well, it's not going to stay there. I knew it was going to be traded off, but I need to be in a good position to convert the win once this pawn is gone. So pretty much what you're going to see now from here to pretty much the end of the game, believe it or not, I analyzed all of this. I analyzed this position up to the point where this pawn has been taken, and I will let you know when I analyze this position up to a point. Rook d8, of course, have to protect this pawn here. It's being attacked twice, so we protect it twice. So now he cannot take first because he will lose the exchange. Rook d3, queen d5, hoping to exchange these queens off so I can just I don't have to worry about these tricky queens going everywhere because the queen's a very powerful piece and queens are great fork pieces, sort of like the knight. And you sort of got to get these things off the board if you really stand a chance of converting your 1 or 2 pawn advantage. Anyway, he goes for it. And so I take. Now, at this point, my opponent probably could have done something else at this point, not to exchange the queens. Probably move to, say, I don't know, e2, let's say, to lead a queen on the board. And I don't know what I would have done at this point. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing here. Queen c4. And then try to push this pawn up I don't know. Well, according to the computer, he can just come down here and attack this little rook here. So if I take, he takes, that's a check, go there, check, come here, and go there and attack this pawn. See, that's what I'm saying. You have to be very, very careful with this type of situation. This is still winning, but I don't know. Maybe that's not the way to go. I don't know. I have to look at this even deeper. But at this point, my opponent probably should have did something else. I believe taking here was a mistake. So he takes. He goes G3. I go H5 to sort of not let this pawn go. At first, I was thinking about playing this move. G5. But I didn't think that was such a good move because I think I would rather have my opponent move here, G4, exchanging the pieces and leaving a piece in the center of the board instead of leaving the pieces on the H file here. So that's why I played H5 first. My opponent playing King G2. Now, at this moment comes the second part where I analyze. And pretty much what you're going to see now is all my analysis that I had analyzed beforehand. I want to move my king up the board to this square, which is easy enough. This is why I moved the pawn here to H5, so this pawn would be trapped. So he's in sort of a Zugzwang here. And if my opponent moves his pawn to H4, then I can just move up to G5, and I would have this pawn protecting the G5 squares, and we can exchange. If he moves this square, and then I would just take, of course, and everything's fine. So that's the reason why I played H5. So from this point on, we'll see that all my analysis that I have done, that I wrote down, that I thought what was going to happen in the game, actually did happen. And from here on out, I just pretty much, every time my opponent made a move, and I said, oh, that's part of my analysis, so I just made a move. It was pretty quick. There was one point where he did make the same move I thought he was going to make, so I had to reanalyze the position, but it's pretty much the same thing. Because I actually put all of this into what was called on chess.com, you have what's called a conditional moves. So if my opponent had played the additional moves like he thought he would have got an automatic response. Up to about 4 moves, I do believe, because I have a free account. Anyway, King F7, bringing my king closer to the center, just like he's doing. So we're getting closer to the center. King E4. Now we're in the center, and he's attacking my rook. Now here's the very tricky part. I don't know how this really pans out, but I figure if I can lock these pawns in first and then protect this rook again, or because this pawn was going to fall anyway, so I really wasn't worried about that. But I didn't want this to happen. Check. Opponent comes here. I come here. No, that wasn't my analysis. Okay, I went G5. So my opponent went here. I don't know. There was some analysis that I had that he would take my rook and his king would be in the center, and my king would be cut off from the center. So I moved G5 first, so that wouldn't happen. I forget that analysis. I can't think of it right now. But anyway, this is why I moved G5. So now I can come close. I can check his king, move his king back, and then facilitate this. Now, rook takes D4. Here's where my planning took place. I believe this is where the analysis comes. If I were to take here now, then the king would be here, and this king could march over here, or can stay in the center to move back to protect his 3-2 majority. Since these pawns over here on the on the queen side aren't moving anyway, or the king side, they're not moving anyway. All the play is going to be over here. So I didn't want to take there just yet. Check first. Make the king move back. Now, instead of the king being on this square when all the exchanges happen, right now it'd be the d4 square with black to move. After this, king e3, king e5, rook takes d5, king takes d5. Now his king is on e3. It's his turn to move, and he can't move any of these pawns here because he's pretty much all in Zugzwang. He can't move these pawns because it's in Zugzwang. So that is what I analyzed way back here at this position. I analyzed this position way back then. True. That's why you have to really pay attention to correspondence chess. Probably if I took it more seriously, I would probably be rated a little higher than 1400. Probably, I don't know, probably maybe around 18, 1900. Probably wouldn't be in the 2000s because those guys, they opening nerds, and I'm not really an opening nerd. I just play the position. Anyway, king d3. So I go f4 because well, nowadays they call it shouldering, but I call it opposition. So our kings are in opposition. So pretty much whoever moves is going to keep the other king in opposition. So the idea here is to get your opponent to move first so you can always have opposition. So that's why I move g4. G takes f4, G takes f4, and now we have to protect this little pawn. h4. Now I have to move. I'm in opposition, but I have a nice little passed pawn here that I have to really protect. King e5. King has to move back because he can't move to this square here, so he has to move back and then come around to get in front of the pawn. Getting in front of the pawn is very important for both pieces. If you want to draw this position, getting in front of the pawn, if you have the extra pawn, getting in front of the pawn is very important for both sides because you need to get in front of the pawn, whether you're wanting to stop the pawn or whether you want to promote the pawn. You have to get in front of it. And the king who gets in front of the pawn draws or wins. King f5. Now I'm going after this pawn here. I probably could have played this move, and then from there this would be played, and then I would go here and then here, then here, then I can move this king over and zap this pawn. But I really didn't want to do that at this juncture. So I started moving my king over because I didn't want a situation where you have a draw situation. Right now this pawn here is going to win me the game. King d3. Don't know why he moved there. Probably should have moved here, and then I would have continued with my plan, of course, of going to king g4. And if he goes here, then I would have taken this pawn. He would have came here. I will go here, and then he can't stop both of these pawns from queening. One of these pawns, sooner or later, is going to queen. His pawns over here are in Zugzwang, so no matter what he does, these pawns are lost and gone. And this was just pretty much another passed pawn sitting here. Or let's say if he does move here, like I said, I can take, and I have a passed pawn. So this position is pretty much lost for my opponent. King d3, g4, king e4. Now I decided I'll leave this pawn alone. What I'm going to do now is get my king to this square where it protects the queening square and where I can just queen my pawn. King g3, king d3. He decides to come back, but it's a little too late. King g2. Now my king is protecting the queening pawn and is only one step away from my king, so right now I'm winning. Of course, I was winning before, but now it's really winning. My opponent with king e2 and f3 pushes the king away from the queening square, and I win the game, and my opponent resigned. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There's been a couple of places in this game where I analyzed pretty much what happened, except for a couple of places, and one of the positions was right here. I analyzed all the way up until right here. So I think I did pretty good in both of those games. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the two games. And I hope you stay tuned for much more ChessRabbitt videos. I'm going to have some more videos. I'm even going to try a couple of banter blitzes, see how that works out. I tried that before, but my computer runs a little slow, so I really can't do banter blitzes. So I may have to get a new computer to do banter blitzes. So I'm going to have to save some money to get another computer so I can do banner blitzes, but I would try it. Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have some more Karpov Dragon series and more stuff, more videos coming at you. So stay tuned to ChessRabbitt. Thank you. Have a good day. ChessRabbitt out.